So as you can see, it's a different day and I'm on another hike. I've been getting some interesting DMs with my last video, kind of inferring and suggesting that the reason that I'm not interested in going back to the Grand Canyon is because as I close in on my 73rd birthday, I just don't have what it takes to do it anymore. All I can say is this. 3 days ago, I did a 15-mile hike, mountain hike, that you saw in my last video. On 3 days rest, I'm now on a 14-mile hike. Again, mountain hike, up hills, down hills. And I'm doing that with a 14-pound pack on my back. So yeah, there's no real question about stamina, my ability to do the hike. But what it really comes down to for me is this. In order to do the Grand Canyon hike, in order to do the rim to rim hike, you have to train and you have to train hard. And in 2021, I gave up my entire summer to prepare for the north to south route. In 2022, I gave up my summer to prepare for the south to north route. And I just don't really feel like I want to give up another summer. I've got 2 trips to Yellowstone planned this summer. I'd also like to make a trip up to the Wind Rivers this summer. And yeah, I just don't want to dedicate another summer to training. Another question that I received from numerous people was, how did you handle the heat? And let me first say that if you go to my channel, I did a complete video on the logistics and planning of the rim to rim hike. I'd really encourage you to watch that video. It has a lot of good information on it. But in my case, I went in late September both days. Beautiful weather, absolutely gorgeous weather on both days. And the highs in the canyon that day were in the upper 90s. I think the first trip I went from south to north, it was 99 in the canyon that morning or that day. And the second time I went out, I think it was 96 in the canyon. But the worst part of the canyon when it comes to temperatures, the absolute worst part, is the box. And in the summertime, it is not uncommon for temperatures to in the box to exceed 120 degrees. So what I did in both of my hikes, I thought I heard something behind me. What I did in both of my hikes is I started early enough that I got through the canyon in both cases, I was through the canyons by 9 o'clock in the morning. So I never really ever had a problem with the temperatures. Also, as I've said in previous videos, I'm a hot weather hiker. I just love it. My sweet spot is like 97 degrees. So I like hot weather. I like hot weather hiking. And but going in late September, temperature was never a consideration for me. It was just absolutely beautiful both days. So I was also asked, what about general pieces of information? I actually have 2, and both of them involve the South Kaibab Trail. The first is, I was in very good shape when I descended the South Kaibab Trail. I had worked hard all summer, and I was in good shape. And even with that, my legs were rubbery when I got down to the Colorado River. My friend Todd calls that trail the knee wrecker, and that's just not far from the truth. So one piece of advice I have is, I don't care how good you think your legs are, get into the gym starting a couple months before you're going to do the hike and work your quads hard. Because if I had done that, I honestly think that descent would have been a piece of cake. The second piece of information I have, actually I've got three. The second piece of information I have is you're going to, in all likelihood, if you're going to do the south to north rim, you're going to go down South Kaibab to Phantom and then North Kaibab up to the top of the north rim. And when you do that, you'll be leaving in the dark. Now I want you to know, the night sky on that on the South Kaibab Trail is it is literally take your breath away beautiful. Literally take your breath away beautiful. The things that you see, when I went in late September, the moon was setting, the night sky, you see things that you have never seen before. And that's the point I want to make. The South Kaibab Trail, I think, can be in places on the treacherous side, particularly in the dark. And if you're going to take the time to admire the night sky, stop walking, stand still and admire it. Because if you walk while you're staring up at the sky, it's just an invitation to trip and break a knee or twist an ankle or go over the side. So make sure you stop. The third thing, and this happened to me on the South Kaibab Trail, I was surprised about this, and that is the batteries went out in my headlamp. And I had anticipated this kind of a problem, so I also brought a small pen light flashlight with me, because trying to have changed those batteries in the pitch black and making sure I got the polarity right and getting them into place would have been a bitch. I mean, it would have really been hard. So the third piece of general information I would have is bring a tiny pen light. Doesn't need to have a lot of illumination, just enough to help you see where your batteries are in your pack, what the polarity is on the batteries, and what the polarity is required for your headlamp. I'll tell you, that saved me a lot of heartache. Also, one other thought about advice, and that is, if you live near sea level, I would encourage you, if you can, try and get there a couple of days before you're actually going to take the hike. Give your lungs a chance to get used to that thin air, because when you're at the top of the South Rim, you're like 9,000 feet, and it's not going to hurt you one bit to give your lungs a chance to acclimate and get used to the lower oxygen content in the air. So I've just finished my 7-mile uphill, and I have to admit I'm a little bit tuckered, but I'm going to sit here and have some lunch, and then I start a 4-mile downhill before I come to another uphill section. So I'm going to rest a little bit and then push on. So I'm about 10.5 miles into the hike now, and I was asked a really interesting question, and that was, did I have any after effects from the hike, and how long did it take me to recover? A really interesting question. So yeah, I had one major problem after the hike, and that is when I got off the hike up on the North Rim, it was really late. It was so dark that my wife couldn't even film me coming off the trail. And the only place in the area that we could get something to eat was closing within an hour of when I got off the trail. So I didn't have an opportunity to cool off my legs. In fact, I went to dinner directly from the car before we even went to the hotel room. So I mean, I went to dinner with all that dust and sweat and everything else on me, because we only had about, as I recall, about 20 minutes before they were going to shut the restaurant down. And the problem with that is, by not having any time to cool off my legs after the hike, about 20 minutes after I got into the hotel room, I got severe cramps in the hamstrings of both legs. And oh man, they were brutal. They were absolutely brutal. I couldn't do anything because if I moved my legs even the slightest distance, the cramps got even more severe in both legs, and it lasted about 15 minutes. And I think if I just would have followed the general direction of taking about 20 minutes to walk on level ground before I started to settle down and rest, I think I could have avoided that. But it was seriously brutal. There's just no other way I can explain it. As far as how long it took me to recover from the hike, I actually was hiking again within about 3 weeks after the hike was completed. I wasn't doing terribly long distances. I was only doing about 10 or 11 miles, I think. But I was able to hike again. In fact, I think I was hiking 2 weeks after the hike. But it was probably 6 weeks before I honestly felt like I fully recovered from the strain of the hike. Well, I'm getting close to wrapping it up. So, 2 final thoughts. And I covered one of these in one of my previous videos, but let me cover it again in case you didn't see it. And that was, what route would you recommend taking if you're going to go rim to rim? And again, I said this strongly. Unless you have some reason to really test your body, or you're under some really significant logistical constraint, definitely go north to south. I'll tell you, ascending the North Rim, even as good a shape as I was in, ascending the North Rim is an absolute bear. So I would recommend you do the north to south route, and going up the south route, take the Bright Angel Trail. The South Kaibab Trail is shorter, but it has no water, and it is a much more severe hike. So take the South Kaibab route out to the top. I think that you'll find it a much easier way to complete the hike. Now, I was also asked, can older hikers really do this hike? And I guess my response is this. I did the north to south rim at 71, and I did the dreaded south to north rim at 72. So I think it's pretty evident that older hikers can do this hike. But I also don't have any medical reasons that would preclude me from taking the hike. So obviously you would need to check with your doctor and see if you have any physical reasons why you cannot do it. And then the second thing I would say is, for me, I trained, and I trained so hard. Go back and look at some of my videos. I've got 35 other videos. I trained really, really hard. And in my training sessions, and I started training intensely about 4 months before I did the hike. And on both years of training to prepare for the hike, I did at least 3 hikes of between 20 and 24 miles in the mountains of Utah to get my legs ready. So I would say, if you're an older person, then, you know, it's absolutely, well, for anyone really, but if you're an older person, it's absolutely essential that you train, and you train hard. And my goodness, what a beautiful bucket list hike it truly is. And so, my friends, that's all the news that's fit to print at this point. I'd like to keep this video on the shorter side. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for joining me on this hike. and I hope it will not take me so long to get my next video out. And hey, by the way, while I'm at it, let me also give a shout out to M over at Outdoor Products. A couple weeks ago, I lost the mouthpiece on my water bladder, making it almost unusable. And called them up, told them what happened, and boy, do they stand behind their products. Within about 7 days, M had sent me a replacement mouthpiece, and the bladder's working again. So once again, thanks to M.